Welcome to the High Level Podcast, guys. This is where we share a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of wit, a little bit of wonder with the world in engineering, science, and mathematics. At least we hope to. That's what we hope for. My name is Jonathan, your host, and my co-host, the beautiful Mr. Damon Huntelaar. How are you today, kind sir?
I'm doing well. Had a good night's sleep.
At least.
And yeah, I think if you can wake up feeling refreshed, then you've got a good start to the day.
That's the real life hack here. But guys, we are mechanical engineers. We have 5 years experience in industry, and we just want to delight you with our thoughts. We are two white guys with a podcast. So in preparation for this episode, I was thinking, I don't know, it just popped into my mind. So you haven't watched How I Met Your Mother yet, have you?
I've watched it. I watched it so long ago, but I've watched the entirety of it.
Okay, fair enough. So there's one episode with J-Lo, and there's a whole backstory behind it. But anyway, she's flirting with Barney now, and he's wearing some fancy suit. I don't know what it is. And she goes up to him and she's like talking about his suit, and he says, my fibers are the tiniest. She's like, oh, I love a tiny fiber. And that's what we're talking about today, right? Nanotechnologies, tiny fibers, and
small things.
Small, tiny things.
And remember, man, whatever she says, it's big enough.
It's big. It's big enough. It's big enough for the boys. So yeah, I think we'll cut a snippet in there of that.
Is this cashmere?
Cashmere? Psh, this is hand-spun virgin merino. The fibers in this suit are less than 12 microns thick.
12 microns? I love a tiny fiber.
Well, you're in luck, because mine's the tiniest. And the more you touch it, the softer it gets.
You can't start talking about nanotechnology without talking about manufacturing, right? And I think the best way to start this is to think about the industrial revolutions we've been through in the last 200-300 years, right? So it started with that first industrial revolution, and this was really the first time we were actually introduced to some form of mechanized production. Throughout history, it was mainly a few guys with their hands making things, but in this part of the time period, we got introduction to steam engines, was a big one. And we could start building bigger things. There were metal forges, there were big things that we could spin, and that was sort of the first industrial revolution. Then we moved into the second one, and this is sort of where we introduced mass production. We had production lines, technology was getting better and better every day, and there was a lot of introduction of electricity, things like gas and oil. So this is really where we got a taste of what does mass production look like. And that was, call it just before 1900, maybe a little bit into the 1900s. And then we had the third industrial revolution, which we started to see electronics start to come in, where you're not just running a motor, you can control the motor. You have access to bigger forms of energy, like nuclear energy. I think that was a lot in part to the world wars that went on, but we won't talk about that. So yeah, the introduction of nuclear, electronics, better ways to control the production process. And then we started to get hints here and there, whispers in the background. Renewable energies, things like solar, wind coming online, geothermal, making big plants like that. And we started to get the introduction of, okay, we can produce a lot of things. How do we do it more sustainably? And now we move to our day and age into the fourth industrial revolution. As my expert, Mr. Huntelaar, don't you want to just explain to me what the fourth industrial revolution is?
So I think the fourth industrial revolution is very much a buzzword. All right.
No, fair enough.
If it feels very vague, it's most likely because we've just started the fourth industrial revolution. The term was first coined by a young man, or actually don't know if he's young. I've never seen a photo of him. By the name of
probably Google a picture
of Klaus Schwab. I hope I said that right. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry. And he is the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, and he is the author of a book called Fourth Industrial Revolution. So yeah, sometimes the fourth industrial revolution can be abbreviated as 4IR or Industry 4.0. They all mean the same thing. And in an article, Mr. Klaus Schwab said in 2016, he said, like the revolutions that preceded it, the fourth industrial revolution has the potential to raise global income levels and improve the quality of life for populations around the world. Around the world, around the world. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, wait, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
This is the man you call young.
Mr.
That's him right there with old Zuma. Anyway, he's not that young.
Nice. Yeah. He actually looks like he might be part of the reptile nation, you know.
No, it could be
reptile overlords. Yeah, so with the fourth industrial revolutions, we got to really start seeing an outbreak of like revolutionary technologies, and that's really what the fourth industrial revolution is about. I think the one technology that everybody by now should know about, unless you live under a rock, is artificial intelligence.
This is our listeners, Mr. Hunselaar. Of course they know about AI. Come on, man. Give our listeners a bit of credit. These are smart
if you're new here, if you've just emerged under a rock, if your best friend is a sponge, then we're here to explain it for you. So there was a McKinsey report in June, and it estimated that generative AI could add an equivalent of 2.6 trillion to 4.4 trillion annually across 63 use cases, and it analyzed in industries like banking, healthcare, and retail. So, I mean, the reason why your GPS can tell you not only how to get from point A to B, but which way is the quickest, and even recognize when something's a little bit funky funks and then takes you a different route, you know. Some work better than others, I'll admit. But yeah, and then also I think everyone knows about ChatGPT now. That's quite a big one. There's also other language models there, but we won't get too into that stuff right now.
Have you played around with the other ones, or just ChatGPT?
My brother's quite into it. He plays with the llama model a lot. So he's developed a like basically an analysis tool using llama model. But yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, so I won't.
Fair enough.
But yeah, he's a smart guy. Anyway, so the next thing is Web3. So
we've heard a lot about that as well.
Yeah, you may be asking yourself, if there's a Web3, what is Web 1 and what is Web 2? So Web 1 is where people first were able to access information on the internet. So this is when I had a computer, you had a computer, but we were 1 trillion miles away from each other, and there was somehow a cable between us. That is basically the first version. And then you had a domain.
The 90s. This was like the 90s,
yeah, this
right? Call it.
This is
the golden era.
Yeah. And then Web 2 saw things like wikis, Wikipedia pages. I don't know. I don't think Wikipedia and wikis are the same thing.
I think isn't that WikiHow? Is that part of Wikipedia? Is it? I don't know. It seems like it should be, but anyway.
A wiki is just an article you can write yourself. And then there's the outburst of social medias like Facebook and Twitter and all of that stuff, and YouTube. And this part really gave people a lot of control over what contents they could create. So now, instead of just being able to access information, now you could create your own content.
And I think now this was the first time where you have content being decentralized, right? You have little YouTube creators, Mr. Beast. This was when Mr. Beast was coming up. So it's not a big corporation now that can make content. You as a small person can make content and put your thoughts, good or bad, into the world. So yeah, that's very interesting.
And then Web3 really saw the decentralization of ownership. And it gave the ownership into the hands of the communities. And these are the technologies like blockchain, cryptocurrencies, token-based economics, and non-fungible tokens. So yeah,
did you ever buy an NFT? Did you buy an NFT yet? Come on, man.
No. Man. I'm obviously behind the times.
Come on, slow to the back.
And a non-fungible token is just something that basically says you own this thing. It's non-fungible because you can't trade it as a one-to-one thing. It's like owning a piece of art. It's just basically a record of you owning that piece of art, where as in like your cryptocurrencies would be a fungible token because you can trade them on a one-to-one basis.
I think it's such a scary industry for a lot of people, because you don't know. And it's like when Web 1 was here, that was also very scary. But the awesome thing about Web 3 is things we do like selling a house. Like you can put that just on it and as an NFT, and you can sell a house and be sure that certificate that you're getting is for that house, and you can see the transaction history. And I think all these flipping bored apes and things is just like the use case, and then it's going to start spreading, probably slower than people think, but No, Web3 is awesome, man. You got to buy an NFT. I'm saying it now. Come on.
Have you bought one?
Yeah, I bought many. Very bad financial decisions. I'll tell you that much. But it's fun in games. Yeah. And I think in line with sort of Web3 and everything coming along is obviously you're going to need every year, and I'm sure we've seen faster and faster computing. We need more computing. We need more storage, things like that. And a lot of that is semiconductors. And I think as we get into later in the episode, it's actually very difficult to create a semiconductor. That's why there's only a few big guys in the world that produce all the semiconductors. And just to give you guys sort of a scale, like the little transistors. So computers, if we oversimplify things, just have a whole bunch of little switches on those little green boards you'll see. Those little switches that NVIDIA, Taiwan Semi are producing are only a few nanometers wide. Nanometers, millionths of a meter, right? And to put that in perspective, a human hair is about 80,000 nanometers in diameter. So it's a very difficult manufacturing process, but it's sort of what we need to push all the things out into the world, right? Generative AI, virtual reality, all of these cool things. So yeah, and I think on top of that comes robotics, Mr. Hunselaar. I don't know if you're interested in robotics or seen anything on robotics.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most fascinating or interesting one is that Boston MIT robotics lab or something. Yeah, where they have that. I mean, you see videos of this thing doing backflips, and I'm like, geez, I can't even do a backflip.
It's crazy.
I mean, not even on a And then like,
but
also
even you
part
saw
of
that
that is
video,
like,
that video I sent you of the Tesla bot. That's terrifying, man. When it shoots the Cybertruck, that's horrifying. I really hope that was a deep fake. But anyway.
Yeah, and then to me, 3D printing is also kind of within robotics, because now we're getting a much more efficient way of manufacturing basically like any shape, really. I mean, all you need is a good CAD software and a little bit of skill and some patience to let it print. But then you see like printing 3D houses and all of that stuff, and it's crazy, man. Like the world's really like it's moving in all these directions.
Speed, right? It's all better manufacturing. So instead of building a house in 3 months, you can print it in 3 days. And a lot of these things as well, and this ties into a project we got going on at work as well, which we won't speak about. But a lot of this stuff is sort of, how do you get in an assembly line or in a factory or in a plant, how do you get everything to sort of talk to each other? And even if those things aren't making the decisions, which at some point they can, how do you get all of them talking to each other to give you a good overview of things so that you can make better decisions about your plant, about how things are working? So again, in previous production plants, we never had this. You sort of just, there was the guy who would feel the oil, or there was the guy who knew the sound of how something was running, and he could tell that the production line was good. But now we can get real metrics, and we can start making better decisions of things. And that's the buzzword, IoT, Internet of Things, right? How do you get everything to communicate? Like your vacuum cleaner. Is it joined up to the Wi-Fi?
It is, yeah. You can we can go out and be like, oh, the floor needs a good sweeping, and then we can go on the phone on the app and we can just say, okay, run, and then it will be like, cool, it's running. And then like,
have you seen?
I get a bit skeptical. I get a bit skeptical about these things. I'm not gonna lie.
Is it?
So
in what way?
Yeah, the other day, just like like the app says it, but is it really?
Is it really?
I mean, I'm not there to like if a tree falls down and you aren't there to hear it, did it make a sound? That kind of thing. So then I think we were at the shops the other day, and then she's like, "Oh, I just got a notification. Well, we have a Roomba, and we've named him Matthijs." And so she's
I
like,
love it.
Yeah, and we're like, Matthijs is busy cleaning, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." But like in my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, he's cleaning." And then we rock up to the house, and he was actually cleaning. He pushed the button, and goes, "I love cleaning."
Technology. Have you seen all the conspiracies around how, because these things are made in China, China puts technology in to spy on you because they want to see what's in your fridge or whatever? Maybe it's true. I don't know. But it just seems a bit wild to me.
I don't know. I feel like if China's spying on me, they're really not getting much. They're just going to see like
that's
some bald dude making some coffee and maybe watching some TV, and every now and then I'll read a thing or watch some memes. But I don't know.
Don't you bring home like nuclear launch codes every now and then? Maybe that's what they're waiting for.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
We'll see. But then this gets all onto the topic that we wanted to discuss today, which is nanotech, which is actually your field of expertise, Mr. Hunselaar. So give me the detail, like give me a high level. What is nanotechnology? What do we do with it?
Yeah, so let's start from the beginning.
The best place to start.
So so when you hear the word nanotechnology, what you really should be thinking about are ways to manufacture and fabricate nano devices and nanomaterials. I think if you've seen the movie Hero 6, and you say he's built some nanobots or whatever, and you look, those aren't actually nanobots. Those are too big to be classified as nanobots. And I think the idea that movies has portrayed about nanotechnology is cool, but it's not entirely accurate. It's 100%. More about the structures that we're building and the materials and the properties of these materials. So yeah, I mean, there's a definition, and it says that nanotechnology can be defined by referring to materials and systems with structures and components that exhibit novel and significant improved physical, chemical, and biological properties. And additionally, towards the phenomenon process, that enabled are the ability to control the material properties on the nanoscale. And nanotechnology can also refer to scale lengths less than 100 nanometers. So we spoke about earlier, you said that a hair is 80,000 nanometers. We're much smaller than that. Much smaller than that. So there's a little scale over there, and that comes from my dissertation. And
did you make it yourself?
Yeah, I made it myself.
Oh, cute, man. That's very
But
nice.
I did modify it from someone. Someone else gave me the idea. So you can see an insect is about 10 millimeters, like a nice, that's a very large ant, but an ant nonetheless. And then, so I'm moving from right to left, and then we get hair, which is about 100 micros around, we said 80 microns. So yeah. And then a blood cell is about 7 microns. And then the HIV virus is 100 nanometers. So now we're starting to move into the nano realm.
Very, very
so
tiny,
the HIV virus is on the large end of the nanotechnology scale. Like if we were building robots to fight the HIV virus, they'd be considered pretty large nanorobots. And then we get DNA, which is 3 nanometers. And then we get carbon nanotubes, which is about 1 nanometer. So now we're really there. And we can go even smaller. So a gold atom is 0.1 nanometers.
Of a nanometer. That's insane.
And it's actually so small that we give it a different unit of measurement. It's called an Armstrong.
It's ridiculous. I think it's so difficult for a human being to sort of visualize how small this is. You know what I mean? Yeah. But really cool.
Yeah. And so nanotechnology, it was really like enabled by the development of specialist equipment that allowed us to manipulate and to observe matter, but on the atomic scale. And like this led to the discovery of carbon nanotubes, and I never know how to pronounce this word, fullerenes.
Fullerenes?
So yeah, these are basically carbon nanospheres. And then and so now we're going to start getting into, okay, what are the kinds of processes where we set nanotechnology now, but
it's very small.
It's a very
tiny.
Small, or it's a very broad term, So when we're talking about like nanofabrication, there's 2 types of processes you can kind of think about, and obviously there's quite a few different processes out there, like lithography and CP, PVD, all those things.
This is not an exhaustive list.
Yeah, but they're going to be broken down into one of these 2 categories, and it's actually quite intuitive. One is top up, and one is bottom down. So a top up process is where we are growing the material by one means or another, and we'll get into a few of the top up processes out there. So essentially what happens is, and there's a nice figure there, that one's also from our dissertation.
Very nice.
So if let's say we want to build a nanocircuit, or a photovoltaic cell or something like that, we'll start with just a substrate, and the substrate can be a silicone substrate, it can be PD, high density polyurethane, something like that. It needs to be quite a temperature resistant substance, because a lot of these processes work at like a really high temperature. And so you'll start with your substrate, and then you'll deposit a thin film onto your substrate, and then maybe you'll deposit a different one. So like, for instance, a battery. You'll deposit for your anode, and then maybe some catalyst or whatever, depends on the design and everything. And then you get basically like a sandwich of different materials. But that's obviously not enough. You need to be able to take away. So you use the other side of the coin, which is top down, which is a material removal process. And so one way is you put a mask on, you etch it. So you put a chemical that burns away one layer, and then you can remove your mask. And now you're actually getting nanocircuitry by following these processes and combining them. You're building like really like RFID tags and things like that. They are manufactured in this way. And you can think about it like this: is bottom up is an additive process, are additive processes, and then top down is removal processes. You can think about it like that. So like you can build think about it like in an art way. Bottom up would be creating a big ass cement block, and then your top down would be the sculptor coming to make your statue.
To make art, yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Same process. And then where my specific expertise is in more thin film deposition processes. So that would be a bottom up technique. And so that we started with something called physical vapor deposition. And what that is when you physically vaporize the material. So you'll have an ion beam or a plasma beam in many different ways. But essentially what they do is they vaporize a solid material. We hurl this material at your substrate, and then it sticks there. And then
what type of materials can you vaporize? Anything, or are there certain
metals? Metals is mainly the main one, and also semiconductors as well.
Okay.
So yeah, PVD is one of these techniques, and then another one is called chemical vapor deposition, where instead of using something to vaporize a material and then fling it at a substance, you're using a chemical reaction to do it. So you'll pump two precursors into a reactor, and they'll react with each other, and then those particles will then deposit onto a substrate.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the main difference between them. And then now you get within chemical vapor deposition, and this is really where my expertise comes in, is something called atomic layer deposition. So it's very much a modification of CVD. So it's atomic layer deposition is a subset of CVD processes. And the difference between atomic layer deposition and chemical vapor deposition, where I said before, chemical vapor deposition is you're pumping two gases into your reactor at the same time. They react with each other, and then they deposit onto the material. With atomic layer deposition, we're making a slight modification to that process, where we're saying, okay, let's pump one gas in. And normally it's a very highly reactive gas. I mean, the easiest one to study is called Al2O3, which is aluminium oxide. And that's very much like a protective layer. And so one of the precursors is trimethyl aluminium, and that will deposit onto your substrate surface because it's highly reactive. I mean, this reaction happens in like less than 0.2 of a second. That's how reactive this stuff is. And like if you had to drop this and it fell in the air, it reacts so quickly that the moment you breathe it in, you're dead.
Sherbet. Okay.
Yeah, so it can be quite dangerous, some of these substances. So that's the first one. So you'll have a substrate, you'll heat it up a little bit, and then maybe you'll bombard it with O3 or something. And the reason why we want to do that is because we need to oxidize the top layer. That's basically like your material preparation. And then then the second step is you have a high temperature, and the high temperature just makes the reaction, because remember, for a reaction to occur, you need some energy, and that's thermal energy.
Provides
and then
heat. Okay.
we vacuum that reactor to maybe about 10 torr, which is, I think, it's very close to like 0 kVA. I think it's like 10 kVA or something like that. It's quite small. I can't remember the exact value. And then, so we won't pump a large amount. We'll pump maybe 200 ccms of. So you don't pump the TMA itself because it's very expensive. So you'll probably have something called your carrier gas, which would be like nitrogen, because nitrogen doesn't react. And then you'll mix that a little bit with TMA. And now when this TMA reaches that oxidized surface, it's so reactive, it just wants to cling onto that oxygen. So if you look at TMA, it's trimethyl aluminium. So it's one aluminium with 3 methyl groups. So it's an aluminium, and then you get 3 branches out, and you get a carbon, and then on top of each carbon, you get a hydrogen atom. Okay. And then, so your aluminium will react with your that oxide layer, and then you'll get first layer of something. And this is what we call the self-limiting reaction. And now what a self-limiting reaction is that when you can think of it like an egg tray now, and each thing on the egg tray is you want to put an egg in, and each trimethyl aluminium can fill in one of these points, and they can't fill in. You can't have 2 atoms filling in a point.
Yeah, because it won't react with itself.
What happens is as the TMA reacts with the surface, it's filling in all these points until your surface is completely covered. And once the surface is completely covered, the reaction is done. It doesn't matter how much more TMA you pump into that reactor, you won't have more growth. You won't have more growth. So then what we have to do is purge the reaction. So that's also why we use the carrier gases, so that it's easier to flow, but then you also end up using a lot less material. And then you'll purge it with maybe just nitrogen. So you'll no longer be injecting TMA into your reactor, and that will just push out all the remaining gas. Then we'll pump in O2 or ozone or something like that. Normally we use ozone because it's a lot more reactive. So then the ozone would react with that aluminium layer, and then you'll get your full trimethyl aluminium. Your aluminium oxide layer, Al2O3. And then you basically and then you'll purge again. And you'll basically just follow this process. And then each time you do one of these processes, or one cycle, we called it, you'll get one atomic layer at a time. And if you tailor this recipe, you're not limited to just two precursors. You can have more. It's a difficult thing to design these recipes, but it can be done. And you can create new materials. You can specify, because you're doing it one layer at a time.
Yeah,
you have a lot of chemical reactions.
Yeah, a really controlled chemical reaction.
And so CVD chemical vapor deposition isn't so much a nanotechnology process, because you're growing the material in that process at the micron scale, whereas in ALD is a nano fabrication process, because you're growing it at 1 nanometer
one atomic layer. Yeah, okay. Oh, thanks, Mr. Insula. I feel like that's a very in-depth look at ALD, and I'm sure you could talk about it for hours. But like, sort of, what are some of the interesting things we can do with these nanomaterials?
So the first and most obvious one is in electronics. So I mean, the new R9 PCs that have started coming out, those chips, those microchips, are being manufactured using this technology.
Okay.
So yeah, you get smaller and faster and more efficient microchips, because the thing about manufacturing substances in a thin layer is, one, they're a lot purer because the process is very controlled, and you also get, like, I want to say augmented. You can think of it as augmented properties. So you could have a solid block of Al2O3, or you could have a thin layer, and if you had to characterize
properties,
their properties would be different. So the thin layer would be stronger, so it's good wear resistance and good thermal characteristics. So it's a good conductor, it's a good electric conductor. It's just harder. So yeah, those chips you're able to make them smaller with less material, and they'll just be able to do more. You can think of it like that. And like, one really interesting,
you get rid of the impurities in that as well, so you get less defects.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, we live in a real world, so that you'll never get rid of all the impurities and all the defects. But yeah, like, so one really interesting thing I saw. So when we were younger, we had CDs, and they were pretty popular. And one thing about these CDs is you would scratch it, and then it's useless.
Stuck, yeah.
And then we saw them phase out, and then we started getting USBs and hard drives and solid state drives and all of that stuff, which is really cool. And then kind of the need for CDs fell away, because why would you have it on a CD where it can easily extract, when you could buy a hard drive, which is a little bit more expensive, but it lasts longer, and you get a hell of a lot more space. But now, thanks to nanotechnology and nanofabrication,
CDs are coming back. Don't tell me.
CDs are coming back. They're coming back, and they're coming back stronger than ever. So I saw a thing where they're using nanostructures to make CDs, and now, instead of being able to store a few megabytes of data, they're able to store petabytes of data. So not terabytes, petabytes. And now, where you would need a whole stack of hard drives to store this information, you just need a little disk. How cool is that? So it's space saving. So I mean, I think, again, a lot of the technologies, it's reducing the size that they operating at.
Yeah, definitely.
One downside is these things are generally very expensive, but we're working towards that.
Yeah, and it'll come down over time. Yeah.
For like energy applications, like solar panels, you're getting a lot more efficient solar panels. So where maybe solar panels are able to harvest, let's say, 30%, now they're able to get like 45%. Batteries are able to store more. And yeah, so again, you get more utility out of a smaller device. And that's really what we're doing. And then I don't know if you want to talk about this, because I know you said there's a lot of applications for food production.
Interesting to me, obviously the food industry is massive in the world, So I was just looking through, and some of these would probably fall into more of your micron scale manufacturing, but I mean, we can talk about it. So one of the things for food production is obviously pathogen control, to try and control diseases getting out from wherever the food is getting packaged, distributed, all of those things. So interesting stat here, and this is from 2011, so hopefully it's not worse than this. But the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control in the US, they found that 48 million illnesses a year in the US are due to foodborne pathogens. 48 million. I think the US population is like 350 million. So that's a lot of people getting sick from food, right? 128,000 people being hospitalized from these pathogens, 3,000 of which result in death. So basically, there's some room for improvement. And the CDC estimated that if you just reduce illnesses by 1%, you could stop 500,000 Americans from getting sick each year. So then this paper went on to basically discuss a bit of and you just 1% seems doable, right? Seems doable. So yeah, I mean, the advantage with now a nanostructured material is that it's able to sort of measure pathogens at places in the past where we couldn't measure, where you'd have to swab and then send out to a lab or whatever. This is going to blow your mind, man. I'm so happy I found this. But so they did one study where they took a little incubation of I don't know what it was actually, probably chicken. And they were able to isolate 88% of E. coli in a sample using some nano-sized magnetic iron oxide particles. And that took 45 minutes of incubation time. So I was like, all right, you never know if it's good or not. Like they just say 45 minutes. And to try and find how long a normal test takes, I was just like, okay, is 45 minutes long, short? It usually takes 48 hours to test for E. coli. 48 hours.
That's impressive, eh?
Right? It's ridiculous. So really, really cool in terms of pathogens. And there's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, we could do a whole flipping series just on pathogens in food. But another application in food is what they call nanolaminates. So basically, they have fruit or vegetables or whatever the story is, and they coat them in a barrier to protect them from moisture, from gases, from other things getting on them. And they can do weird crap with this stuff, man. They can put different flavors in. They can start putting vitamins in, nutrients in. So there's a lot of, I think, scope for this. Could be really cool. Whether the food manufacturers want to give us more nutrients, I don't know, but the option is there. Then something I found interesting as well, when you're busy distributing food, transporting food, things like that, food itself and whatever bacteria is on it actually produce these little like biofilms, which apparently are very difficult to degrade. You can't just use for lack of a better word, like a normal soap just to wash things off. Like they create a barrier that you sort of have to break down chemically if you want to get to the actual food, and it can be harmful to people's health. And it obviously can foster diseases and things like that. So what they did was they took a titanium oxide and they activated it with ultraviolet light, and they found it effective in sort of breaking down these bio layers. So I think there's a lot of scope there as well. That was still in the early stages, but really, really, really cool when you can start working at the micro and nano scale, what we can do with just everyday foods, right?
I know there's really some cool stuff. Also, there's a guy in our research lab.
Yeah.
And what he was trying to look into was how can we create medicine? So he wanted to use carbon nanotubes, and then he wanted to basically put cancer medication in them. And then with this, you inject the medication directly into the cancer cells. So no more chemo or anything like that, just directly into the cancer cells. And then it kills the cancer from the inside of the cells. And so basically you kill the cancer cells and there's no adverse effects on your body because it's just the cancer that's
it's just going straight to the cancer. Yeah.
And it's some really interesting applications there as well, like also like for heart stents, you get where they coat the heart stents with medicine, and then over time that medicine just periodically dispenses into. So yeah, there's just some. It's actually amazing what we can do with really small things.
It's ridiculous. Like there was, I remember I don't remember the names of the movies, but you remember those movies where you shrink down and the guys are riding around in these little submarines, like looking for a disease or whatever in someone's body. Like that's technically what we're doing. We're not shrinking the people, but you're discriminating between what's a disease and what's not, and getting it to go directly for that. It's awesome, man. I think the world's bright. The future's bright. Did you want to chat about any of these other points?
No, I think we've kind of spoken a lot about what you can do. Essentially, I mean, I suppose one more thing is basically like sensor technology. And again, by using these and this kind of falls under electronics, by using these nanostructures to actually manufacture sensors. These, because again, they're so small, they're really sensitive to particles. I think I read a paper where they took a leaf, they coated it with like a PDME or something like that, and they had that structure, that microstructure, on a leaf surface. Then on top of that, they put carbon nanotubes, and then a bit of copper, I think, as well. I can't remember exactly. And they made 2 of these, and then they put these 2 layers together, and then they made a pressure sensor. And now this pressure sensor was so sensitive that you put a drop of water on it, and it can detect it. You put another drop of water, and it can detect that difference. So, like, it's just crazy stuff that we can do.
It's ridiculous, man. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how the world's going to look in like 20 years? Oh, it's going to be amazing.
Okay, yeah, and then I think we can move on to
All
our
right.
last study.
You have a nice little study for us here, Mr. Insula.
Yeah, so this is a study of how, just to kind of demonstrate how nanotechnology is being used to improve existing technologies. And I thought this was a really nice one because it kind of ties into our previous episode where we spoke a lot about hydrogen and what it's doing and how we're going to get it to improve.
One of the talking points is, how do you store it conveniently?
Yeah, so this study looked at that. So so the study is called "A Recent Progress of Nanotechnology in Enhancing Hydrogen Storage Performance of Magnesium-Based Materials, a Review." So from what I can understand from the study, they investigate hydrogen storage capacity in magnesium-based materials with nanostructure. And I mean, we've said it before, and I'm sure we'll say it again. One of the biggest challenges that the hydrogen industry is trying to solve is, how do we store hydrogen efficiently and economically? How can we store it for a long time? And when we want it, how can we make sure we can get it easily? And this is a study that kind of tried to address that, because, you know, I mean, we said that when hydrogen is stored at low temperatures and high pressures, it can be stored as a gas, or it can be stored as a liquid. It's really low temperatures, and it's difficult to keep things that cold. So
Agreed.
sort of one of the more, I don't know, tantalizing, is that the correct word? Technologies is, can we store it as a solid state? And how do we do that? And the way they do that is they'll have a metal alloy, and then they'll basically store the hydrogen atoms in that as a solid. And when they looked at magnesium-based storage materials, there's a theoretical limit to that, and that's basically 7.6% of the weight. So if the magnesium weighs 1 kilogram, there's a 1 kilogram. There's a, what's 7% of 100? There's 7 grams. Yeah, 7 grams of hydrogen that you can store in that. But the problem is, even though we have that theoretical limit,
you shouldn't should not do maths on a podcast. Never do maths on a podcast. It's 1,000 grams. Yeah, so 76 grams. Am I right?
Yeah, 76 grams.
Never do maths on a podcast.
And now, but now, due to poor kinetic and thermodynamic properties, the materials aren't as good at storing the hydrogen. So we're not reaching that theoretical limit. So one of the problems is, to get it back from this material, you have to heat it up. It excites the hydrogen atoms, and then now they can be released from the substance. And you need to heat it up quite a lot. So what this study looked at was alloying nanostructures with magnesium, these magnesium-based products, to basically reduce the desorption temperature. So instead of now having to heat it up to, let's say, 300 degrees Celsius, they were managing to reduce it to under 200. And yeah, that's just one sort of example of what we're doing with nanotechnology to improve technology. So it's also about making things more convenient and economical. So there's real life applications for these things.
No, agreed. And I think so just to sum up on why this is important for hydrogen, if you look at hydrogen itself, like you said, to store it as gas, if we look at it per cubic meter, you'll only get like 40 kilograms of hydrogen per cubic meter as a compressed gas. And that's at 700 bar. Then if you move to a liquid, if you can liquefy it, you'll get about 70 kilograms per cubic meter. But if you can make it into a solid, you get about 80 kilograms per cubic meter. So, I mean, it's there. And I watched the video this morning, that video I sent you this morning. I think it's the German army submarines have been using metal hydrides to store hydrogen in their submarines since the early 2000s. So it's not like this technology is not used. It's like, how do we make it better? And with the introduction of your research, obviously, we can sort of make the manufacturing methods better, more efficient, have porous mediums, make it easier for the hydrogen to get into the lattice. So many things to do with this.
Yeah. So yeah, no, really, really nanotechnology is a real thing. It's maybe
a real
not
thing.
exactly what people think it is, but it's
happening
really
every
out
day.
there. And it's actually, to some extent, it's better than what people think it could be, because it's not just about building a very small robot. It's materials that have extraordinary properties.
Yeah, and it could literally change people's lives. It is changing people's lives every single day. So last night I was trying to take out a tap. If you haven't noticed, we've moved on to permission to bitch now.
Yeah, I got that part.
I was taking out a tap, and the previous plumber, in his intense knowledge, had decided now, when you take out a tap, it's on a porcelain basin now. There's just a nut that doesn't hold water in, it doesn't hold fork all in. It just holds the tap onto the basin. And it's still the older one, so it's like a brass nut. And this oak had decided, in his infinite wisdom, that in between where the tap's going in now, he put like a cement putty type of thing. So now this has solidified and become part of the basin. And I need to remove this tap because the internals are fucked up, man. Like there's no coming back from it. So I bought the new tap, very happy. Trying to take this thing out, can't. And it's obviously, plumbing is never in a convenient location. Like trying to loosen this nut is ridiculous. So anyway, I spent like half an hour, lots of swear words flying around, as you do. Finally, I get to the end. I'm like, no, man, let me just try tap this thing a bit with a hammer. It went a bit more than tapping. And there was one tap that just destroyed everything, cracked the basin. So now my whole basin is broken. I found out when looking at it what the idiotic plumber before had done. All I wanted to do was replace a tap. Now I'm replacing a whole basin unit. So that was my Friday night. And
that's quite interesting.
And you, Mr. Hinselaar, what are you bitching about this week?
What am I bitching about this week?
Nothing to bitch about.
I don't know. I'm sure there's something to bitch about, but I'm drawing a bit of a blank right now. Let me think.
We can get back to it, man. What's your life hacks?
Yeah. My life hack. Okay, so this one might seem very insignificant, but I can be a very forgetful person and very distractible. Okay. So if I have to take out the trash or the rubbish or something, whatever, I'll take out the trash. I will then go and I'll throw the bag away. All's good and well with the world. The problem is that's where it stops. You know, there is still a dustbin out there that needs a bag. And now because
very true.
I have now taken the bag out and thrown away and forgotten to put the thing back in, I forget. You get
in trouble.
And then I get into trouble, and it's not a fun time. So my life hack is, when you take the bag out, before you even go and throw the rubbish bag away, put a new bag in the bin.
Is that the hack? That's genius, hack. Man. It's just
and it saves time because it's not.
I don't know. For me, it's convenience. Like to try to get now, I must look in the cupboard, get a new bag out, do the shaky thing. Then you can't find the end where to open the bag. That thing. Oh, then you're going around the whole bag.
You just got to find the corner and you.
Is it a corner? Is that the technique?
Yeah, you got to lick the fingers, wet them a little bit. You grab it and you just start, and then you'll find it. Trust me, it works.
Oh man, I usually do it before I go to work. So I'll drop the bag in the thing, then send Jen a message saying, "Listen, I took the rubbish out. Will you just put a new bag in?" Just because I hate it so much. I don't know why. Damn it. Okay, but hack. So when you take the bag out, immediately there, put the bag in.
Yeah. Have you got a life hack?
I have no life hacks this week. My life has been falling apart this week, so I have no life hacks this week.
Well, now you at least know an efficient way of changing the trash.
Now maybe I'll get into trouble less. Thank you, Mr. Hinselaar. I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to move into memes.
Yeah, let's move into memes.
Okay, this is going to take a bit of
setting recording.
I don't exactly. We are.
Yeah. So, yes. In our last session, we were doing the meme section, and when we were done, we had realized,
and we were loving it. We were loving it.
Yeah, we were having such a good time. And then like half an hour later, we're like, cool, we're done now. And then we realized we didn't record like that whole thing. So we had to redo it, but then we decided to take out the meme section. And my heart hurts a bit, you know.
All right. Yeah, ladies and gents, we are getting into memes now. So this is something Mr. Hinselaar sent. Please remember that this is Damon sending these things, not me. We got Jordan Peterson going.
just hard to even imagine. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you give a man a rat, you satisfy his rat desire. If a rat plays Monopoly with another rat, and rats do that, by the way, like lobsters, the little rat will always lose. That just shows you whose side God is really on. Then the losing rat will yell at the big rat, because he's the big rat, which inevitably results in mass genocide, which is what a rabbit would do. You're such an idiot. It's just hard to even imagine. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you give a man a rat, you satisfy his rat desire.
Which is what a rabbit would do. People are so funny.
The part that gets me is where he's like, just shows you which side God is really on.
Which side God is on. Inevitably leads to genocide. All right. Oh, snap. Oh, guys, for those of you who are just listening, this guy does a dance move to distract the guy who's fighting. It's magic. Magic. I love it.
And it worked.
All right. Memes from me now. So this one I feel like merits a bit of discussion afterwards, but yeah, let's go for it.
If you were in a room, like a 10 by 10 concrete room, what do you think the largest animal you could kill is? Let's say you're naked. You don't have any like belt or shirt to help.
Can I have underwear on? I feel like that should make a difference. All right.
Okay.
To be respectful. Yeah, to be respectful.
What do you think the largest animal?
At first, I want to pick an animal like something that's a little more defenseless than others.
Like what? Let's talk about it.
I mean, like a horse.
A horse would murder you. He's gonna rear up you like a rabid horse.
If they're all aggressive,
very aggressive, and you're in a concrete. There's nowhere to go, and the bell rings, and they're coming at you.
Maybe a ferret.
A ferret. He'd bite you and scratch you pretty good. You think?
But what about like a steer?
Yeah, but a steer would just run you into the concrete wall over and over.
You're the one asking the question. What would you be able to take on?
Yeah, a cat.
Yeah,
I think I could kill a cat.
If you were in a room, like a 10 by 10 concrete room.
So what animal do you think you could take? Biggest animal that you feel like you could take down?
Biggest animal that I could take down. I know what it wouldn't be. It definitely wouldn't be a chimpanzee.
No, 100. No, dude.
No,
that's a death sentence. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I could do a dog. I wouldn't want to kill a dog because I like dogs.
Same.
But like I could probably do a pretty big dog.
Big one even.
I don't know. Yeah, but the thing
I don't know.
is, latches. Yeah, but get him in a headlock, man. I don't know. I Am Legend style. I don't know.
Maybe like a koala bear. I don't know.
Definitely not something hoovy. Maybe a sheep. Do you think you could do a sheep?
Yeah, I think I could take on a goat.
You could do no ways. Goats, man. Goats will ram you. They'll break your leg. I don't know. Interesting conversation. All right. You ready for this? This is just wholesome. Oh, shit. There's a cattail, right? Okay, you ready for this one?
All right, nobody freak out, but I just wanted to let you guys know that it's finally fish doorbell season again, which is the most wonderful time of the year. This website is called Fish Doorbell, which is Dutch for fish doorbell. And you might be thinking, what is a fish doorbell? There's no way it's a doorbell for fish. But it actually is a doorbell for fish. Basically, there's a dam in the Netherlands with a little gate in it. And they can't leave the gate open all the time because obviously the water gets through. So they have to open it periodically to let the fish through. And basically what they realized were predators were waiting outside the gates and ambushing the fish that were waiting by the door. So the solution they came up with was to live stream the gates, and then people can watch it. And when a fish is waiting outside, you can ring this doorbell for the fish and let it through. I know I'm pretty easily entertained, but in my opinion, this is like one of the best sites on the internet. The thrill you get letting a fish through is unparalleled. Oh, he's a monster. Let's go. Be free, buddy. All right, nobody freak out, but I just wanted to let you guys know.
How awesome is that?
That is cool.
Man, flip.
That's like one of the things that like my faith in humanity has been restored.
Right. So good. All right, Mr. Unsala, let's get on to recommendations. What's your recommendations this week?
Ooh, have you ever seen the show Good Omens?
Good Omens? No, never. No one.
Yeah. So it's about this. It's about this angel and this demon, and it's a comedy, and they were best friends basically with each other, but like obviously they're not allowed to. One's an angel, one's a demon, and like at some point in time they realized that where the angel went to go spread peace and goodness, the demon was always sent to the same place to spread chaos and hate.
Okay.
and badness and whatever. And they realized they were just canceling each other out. So they were like, what if we just stop and then just enjoy life? And then now it's about like the end times and how they realize that they actually like planet Earth, so they don't want it to end. But it's quite funny. There's a scene where the demon, his name is Crowley, and he's got up a whole bunch of plants, and he's walking through his garden, and he sees a plant with a spot, and he goes, "Is that a spot? I don't like spots. I've told you guys time and time again that I don't like spots, and now you have to die."
Now you have to die. Sherbet.
Takes this plant, he walks away, and you hear like a ground or whatever, and he comes back and goes, "I told you what would happen if you grow spots. Now grow better." And then all the trees just start shaking. It's hilarious.
Is it a cartoon or is it
no
real people? Oh
yeah.
Nice. Anything else?
Good. No. You?
Bad Omens, you say? I'll have a look. Is it on a platform I can get a hold of? Good Omens.
I think it's on Amazon.
Oh, you see, that's not helpful. I'm not getting an Amazon Prime thingamajig. I know we say this every week. All right, for me, two recommendations. First one, The Incredibles. Rewatched it. Incredible. Really good. I really liked it. I forgot how much I liked it. So if you haven't seen it in a while, watch it again. Really worth it. Then I started watching, I don't know if this is a recommendation or not yet. It's a new thing on Netflix. I think it's called Zeus the Last God or something. It's an anime, basically, where you're taken back. It's like a mythological anime. And I've just started watching, like I said, but basically where the gods are trying to not get involved now, and they're trying to bring up this guy's name's Heron to like lead the world into a time of peace. So it looks really cool. And there's demons and they're fighting them. And so it looks cool. Maybe I'll get through the whole thing by next podcast. But yeah, so watching that. All right. Anything else from you, Mr. Insular?
Nothing else from me.
All right, guys, feel free to reach out to us. We have an email. It's highlevelpodcasts with an S, podcasts@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. The handle is @highlevelpodcasts. Thank you guys so much for listening for the full episode, and we hope to see you next time.